Today is July 21st, 2007. I am Jessica Clark. It is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project. To start with, can you please state your full name?
August Heyne.
And where were you born?
I was born in near Heil, North Dakota,
And when were you born?
in November the 8th, 1913.
Did you ever hear a story about your birth?
No, no.
Do you know if a midwife or a doctor was present?
Uh, I don't know.
Can you share one of your earliest childhood memories with us?
Yes, I do remember when my youngest brother was born. That was in 1917. I remember the doctor coming out with a horse and buggy, and it was during the day on July 10th, 1917. And I remember we were sent outside, and I remember that my sister and my sister was younger, 2 years, but I do remember that, so I would have been only 6 years old probably.
What is your brother's name?
Edwin.
How many children were there in your family?
There was 5. I had 4 brothers and 1 sister, or 3 brothers and 1 sister. Art, Emil, and Edwin were the boy's name, and my sister's name was Loretta. She's still alive. The other 3 brothers are. In fact, my youngest brother Edwin just died in March this year.
So is Art the oldest then?
Art was the oldest, and Emil was 2 years younger, and I was 2 years under Emil. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what Art was like when you were growing up?
Well, he was the oldest, and it ended up, my dad died in 1927, so I was only 13 or 14, but Art was about 17 then. So he was kind of responsible to take over the farming, although Emil and I did help a lot with that. But yeah, he had to be in charge most of the time. My mother was still alive, but
Were you close to Art when you were growing up?
well, not as close as I was to Edwin or Emil. They were, well, Emil was 2 years older, and Edwin was about 2.5, 3 years younger. Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about Emil's personality?
Emil he was very conscious, and he would have, if he'd have gone to high school, he would have probably gone on to be a minister, because he was very interested along that line. But he died young. He was only 48 when he died. Yeah.
How did he die?
Well, he was alone. He lived on the farm, and that was the rest of us all had left the farm, and he was there alone. And then he had put made a garage out of the north part of the house. That was used as a granary before. That was our room, us boys' room when we were young, of course. And then later on, he made a garage out of it, and it was in November, and for some reason he had the car running, it'd warm up, and he had the doors open into the house, and the fumes from the car is what he died from. It was in November, or about the middle of November. It was kind of cold that time.
And Edwin is your younger brother.
Yes, he was the youngest one.
What type of a brother was he when you were growing up?
Well, we had gone out west 2 years and to work. First time we went into Montana and we worked there. And then later on, him and I went into the service together. And we were in the same battalion. He was in B Company and I was in A Company in a tank destroyer battalion. And of course, I got hurt in Italy, but he went on and he had to be in there, biggest part of another year and a half after I got hurt in January 44, and he didn't get out until in, September of 45. But then he did end up with a nervous breakdown. He was in the service he was in combat about 2.5 years.
So were you guys drafted?
Edwin was drafted and I volunteered because I looked up my number and I would have had to go in about 2 or 3 months. And so I volunteered and I went the same time he did. And we're inducted in Fort Snelling, Minnesota, and went to Oklahoma for our basic and ended up in a tank destroyer outfit. We took our basic in field artillery.
Loretta is the baby of the family?
Edwin was the baby.
Edwin was the baby?
Edwin.
So Loretta is...
Loretta was...
Loretta
was, yeah, she was 2 years younger than I was, and Edwin about 3.5 or so.
Can you tell me a little bit about your sister? What was she like when you were growing up?
The sister?
Mm-hmm.
Well, ended up as she, of course, had to help a lot with the housework and where we had to help with outside chores and the farming, and where she helped her mother a lot. And she even milked the cows too, helped with the milking and stuff. Yeah, she had and then she did go to high school and graduate from high school in Leith. But she's still alive. She lives here in Bismarck. She's 91 now.
Let's see here. When you think back to your childhood, how would you describe yourself? What type of a kid were you?
Well, I guess I was okay. I was in the middle, had 2 older brothers and two younger siblings. So I don't know.
Were you close to all of your brothers and sisters, or was there one that you were closest to?
Well, I was really closer to Emil and Edwin, yes, than I was to Art. Art got married when he was 21, so he had but then of course he was grown up by then, naturally. Yeah.
So what type type of things would you do with Edwin and Emil for fun?
For fun?
Hmm.
Well, we started playing baseball in school, and of course we practiced a lot along at home, especially Emil and I. Edwin was a little bit younger. Art helped too with the baseball. But I ended up getting on the baseball team when I was 14 years old. Play for the town team of Heil. And I played baseball for about 13 seasons. Part of the time I was gone during the 30s, but the last year I played when I was, of course, in 1940 and went to the service in 41. But I'm still a baseball fan, and I had the last even made the team playing baseball when I was in North Africa. After the Tunisian campaign, we moved back to central North Africa, south of Algeria. We were about 80 miles south of there, and I was driving a half track, and then we had the tanks. We had to wait for flat cars to bring us back because they didn't want us to run the track all the way. It was back about 800 miles from Tunisia back to North Africa, to Algeria, yeah. Anyway, I was back there 6 weeks, and I came later, about 6 weeks after the others had convoyed back with trucks and jeeps and stuff. But anyway, I made the baseball team after I got back.
So when you were playing for the town team, did you have your own glove and ball and bat?
Oh yeah, well, not the bat, but the glove and the balls were furnished. Yeah, the guy had to have a glove. Yeah.
How did you get that? Was that something that your mother provided for you, or?
We picked up a used glove somewhere. I don't know. I imagine my mother bought it, or I might have bought it myself. We worked out quite a bit. I worked out when I was only 14 years old on a threshing crew and earned some money that way. And
so when you would work out, was that money you would get to keep that money?
oh, sure. Yeah, I got to keep that money. Yeah. I know one time we worked for, that one fall worked for two different farmers besides our own. One was Atlas, and we thrashed there for about 3 days, and I furnished the team and the bundle rack. And then later on, I was working with another farmer for about 4 days, yeah, with the team and rack, and I got $7 a day, which was pretty good money. I don't remember what year that was, so.
So the baseball glove that you had, was that one that you would share with your brothers, or did each one of your brothers have one as well?
My Emil had a rack and worked with the same group separately, yeah.
When you would play baseball for, the town's name is Heil?
Mm-hmm.
Would you guys have game? How would you guys play game? Would you guys go to different towns, and if so, how'd you get there?
Yeah, we had a league, eight teams in the league, and so we played 16 games. We couldn't play ourselves, so there was 14. Yeah, we played once at home and once away, I can name you the towns that were in the league if you want me
That
to.
would be great.
Well, there was 48's, Cannonball, Flasher, Lark, Carson, Elgin, and Isle. I think that was all 8 when we first had the league.
When you had an away game, how did you guys get to that game?
By car. Yeah, everybody, we had cars. Of course, that one year I had to ride to town for practice with a horse. That was 4 miles from town. But we only practiced once a week and then played on Sundays.
So for a game, would this be something that the whole community would come out and watch?
Yes, definitely. We had all with big attendance. Yeah, that was, in those days, started in 1928. Well, that's about all the things that were for entertainment. Well, they used to have barn dances on Saturday night, of course, but the sports was baseball, and everybody had a team, and people come out to attend the team. And then when I came back from the service, then I ended up managing the team that I played for about 7 years. And then I also had the program for a couple years from Elgin. Had the Legion and 2 younger teams during the summer.
Did your home responsibilities, your chore and farming, ever get in the way of baseball, or how did you balance that?
No, we always, for practice I had to do the chores a little bit early and go to town. We always practiced at 6 o'clock in the evening, but we had to do our milking beforehand.
Did you guys have uniforms, or did you play?
No, we had uniforms. The first year I didn't have a uniform. Well, I didn't play right away until we had played about 6 games, and before I got on the team, and I played second base then. And I was the second string catcher when the other catcher had some trouble.
Did you have a good team?
Yeah, we did. We went to the state tournament twice. Once when I was playing and then once when I was managing.
What other types of things would you do for fun?
Well, we used to go down to the river and swim. The river was 1.5 miles away. That was all right. And then I'd done a lot of hunting too and trapping.
How did you learn how to swim?
In the river, by being in the water, finally learned how. Took a while.
You said you did some hunting, so did you have a shotgun or a rifle?
Yes, I had shotgun and a rifle. Yeah, a 22. We hunted rabbits with the 22, and naturally the pheasant was for shotgun. I had towards last I had a 16 gauge for pheasant.
So were there a lot of pheasants when you were growing up?
Not very many. They'd just come in the 30s. They started them out there, probably in about 36 or 8, somewhere in there. And then by the time I got out of the service, I was home on leave. No, it was after I got out in 45, yeah. There was a lot of pheasant. I know one time my brother was home from the service that one fall, and just when pheasant season was open. So we went out and with the car and drove out in the field, and we shot, oh, well, my wife and I lived on the farm after the first year, and that was in 45. We got married in May of 45 and went out to the farm on July of 45. But anyway, that fall, there was a lot of pheasant. I know that one time we shot about 30 of them. And Art, he was back from the service, and him and I and were out there, and I was going to quit when we had about 10, but Art says, well, there's another one. And by golly, ended up with, and we went down the well and cleaned them. And we had to can them because we didn't have no refrigeration. So we ended up with a whole bunch of pheasant. But there was so many pheasant, it just, you could see just 30, 40 pheasant, no matter where you went.
So did you have dogs to retrieve them, or did you retrieve
No.
them?
No, we didn't have any dogs. They were, there's so many, and we got close enough to shoot them.
And when you say rabbits, were you hunting jackrabbits?
Yeah, jackrabbits. Yeah, I hunted those for many years.
Were there lots of jackrabbits back
There
then?
was a lot of them in the 30s. There was lots of rabbits. In fact, they used to have drives. They'd take a section at a time, and they'd get about 100 people, and then they'd distribute them on all four sides of the section by truck, and then they'd all move in, and I was on one drive, and that was only a section, about 3 miles, or less than 3 miles from our home place. And then the Leith had organized the drive, and then at night they had I don't know how many they had in that truck, 200-300 rabbits probably. That was in more than one section though that they worked. I only worked in one section that day. That you had to use shotguns, of course, because naturally a rifle traveled too far.
Did anybody ever get injured in doing one of those drives? Was anybody injured when they participated?
No, not the day I was out, no. Yeah, after, they got together pretty close, so they had to be pretty careful.
How about ducks or geese? Did you ever hunt them?
Ducks, not too much. We didn't really have any ducks around there until in the 40s and afterwards. There might have been some, but we never hunted ducks. But I did hunt pheasant after the season opened. But then, of course, in the 30s, why you didn't dare hunt them. The season never opened until the early 40s, because they had to be multiplied after they brought them in to the county.
How about deer? Did you hunt deer?
Yeah, I hunted deer and antelope. Yeah, I hunted deer for, at least 12 years. And antelope, I was out twice for antelope.
So who gave you your first shotgun?
Actually, I bought it myself. I had a single shot 12 gauge, yeah. But like I say, we earned some money, by working out and trapping when we were young.
How old were you when you got your first shotgun? Do you remember?
I was probably only about 16.
You know who taught you how to shoot a gun?
Which kind of?
Who taught you how to shoot?
Oh, I learned myself. We did use some clay pigeons. The Legion had a turkey shoot, what they called, and they used clay pigeons, and I learned a lot by then. And later on, Jack, my son, and I, we got one of those things you throw pigeons with, and you might done that too. And yeah, I got fairly good with pheasant, but we hunted pheasant a lot. That was, of course, later on. I couldn't walk too much. I had to hunt out of the vehicle quite a bit. But I got permission to do that for deer and everything, and for pheasant. I could shoot them out of the vehicle because of my handicap.
You mentioned trapping. Will you tell us a little bit about trapping?
Yeah, we caught some badgers, and we trapped weasel. We even trapped some skunks. That was not a very good job, but they were worth about $3 a fur, and then naturally everybody tried to make some money some way.
How did you trap a skunk?
Oh, I set traps. You could tell where there was a family of skunks around, and you just set the traps and caught them.
Did you ever get sprayed?
No, but I know, remember one time I skinned some before I went to school, and of course got quite a reaction from that.
Did they send you home?
No, but yeah, Emil and I both trapped them and skinned them, send them to the fur house after the skin was. But I caught one badger, and that was really a nice one, and I got a good price for that. I think I got about $8 for that skin. It was a lot of money in the 30s. But a lot of them trapped beaver and too, but not in the late 30s, maybe not in the early 30s. They weren't allowed to trap beavers. There was a lot of them down on the river. The river was only a mile and a half south of our farm, so there was beaver and muskrat there, but we never trapped those.
So did you have like a jackknife or something that you'd take out when you were trapping so that you could skin them, or?
Well, we had to kill them and skin them, yeah. Usually killed them with a rifle, whatever there was. Because we used 22s, for all the rabbit hunting.
Can you tell me a little bit about what the summer months were like when you were growing up?
Well, the 30s were awful hot, But then there really wasn't much of a crop for, starting in 31, 32, 33. And then in 34 I was gone. We went out to Idaho. 35, went back again, and I worked out in Idaho for those 2 summers. And then in 37, I was home, and my other brothers were gone. But there wasn't much of a crop then either. And not until about 39 we finally started getting some crop again. But I helped with the farming all those years by horses. Yeah. In fact, I run a 3-horse sulky plow when I was only 12 years old. I had 3 horses, and the other 2, we had 2 gangs, and they had 5 horses on those, and so we ran the 3 plows. And then we never used a tractor until my brother stayed on the farm, and the other 3 of us boys all went. Art had to go into service too, and Edwin and I and Emil stayed on the farm. And then he bought a tractor, and when I got out of the service in 46, I helped farm with Emil. And then that was the first time we used a tractor. We had gotten rid of all the horses by then, or Emil had. They were still there when I went in the service.
How many horses did you have on the farm?
Oh, we had about 20 of them, about 20 horses, work horses. I had a couple saddle horses, and I had done a lot of riding with a saddle horse. That was my transportation when I was a teenager, to go to neighbors, and I even rode to town quite often, went to the show once in a while.
Which town had the theater?
Which one?
Which
What?
town had the shows?
Leith, yeah. They had a show there, in the very early 30s. They had show there all the time, and of course we were only 6 miles from Leith and 5 from Heil, so.
You mentioned that you went to Idaho in 34 and 35.
Mm-hmm.
What brought you out to Idaho?
Well, we, a friend, Gottfried Seller and we hooked the freight. We were out in Montana. That's when they started to build that big dam. And there was a rumor that they needed help. And as it happened, it was play day at Leith. And, the whole county got together for that. Or Elgin and Carson and Leith and Heil, anyway. Anyway, this guy spread the rumor that they really needed help. So it ended up there was about 20 people from the Heil area in Elgin and Carson and Leith went out there to that place out there in Montana where they were digging the rocks to take to the dam. And my friend and I went out, and I never got on to working there, but Gottfried Seller did. And I was there 3 days, and I never got on working, and he did. So after he got laid off, and then being there were so many there in line, they only let him work 2 or 3 days, and then that's the rest of them on, and not all of them got on either because there was too many people there. Anyway, we caught a freight there at Havre, Montana, and went out west. And then we ended up in Pierce, Idaho. And we seen a sign. Well, my friend was interested in placer gold mining. And then we stopped in Spokane, and he went to a library, and he told them that the best place would be to go to Pierce, Idaho, and that's where we went. Anyway, we walked out from there and we seen a sign for a dairy that needed help. And it ended up, it was 8 miles, but we walked out there that one morning, the first morning we were there. And he got on working for that dairy, and this dairy, they were supplying milk to the CC camps. That's why they were out there actually in a open area. And then I stopped at a guy by the name of Peterson, and he had a ranch, and I got on working there for $30 a month. And that was in 1934. And I worked there with him till September. And then this camp that was selling milk, he was through. He wasn't going to spend the winter there. So he was taking his cows back down to southern Idaho. And they started out driving them. And he asked or hired me to go with him south. And then I had a saddle horse that I used. And there was 2 saddle horses and the pickup, and we drove about 30 cows for 2 days. And then their hoofs got sore. And then they had to get trucks and load them up. And then I had to take those 2 saddle horses down, which is about 80 miles more to go, and I spent the night out in the open and got there at that ranch where I was supposed to go eventually. So I had about 80 miles on a horseback deal there. But I even had a saddle horse that Peterson, and that was really a good saddle horse. That was really a fast that they let me ride that summer, and so I was used to riding, of course.
You mentioned that the summer months were hot. How about was there a lot of rain at that time?
No, it was so dry, no rain. No, we used to, we played baseball all the time. There was a lot of days that was 95, 100 above in the 30s in the afternoon, yeah. But I don't know, we didn't mind it. We done that too when we started working 100 above.
So how did you keep the animals hydrated?
Well, they got by till we brought them back in, and then of course they had to give them water right away. People too.
Where would you get the water from?
And out of a well tank. Horses naturally got the water out of the tank, water tank.
Did you ever witness any sandstorms when you were growing up?
Lots of them. Lots of sandstorms. Yeah, our land blew and blew and blew. And then, of course, it got a lot of that dirt in the house and all in the buildings. I don't know why there was so much wind and hot, and dry, no rain.
Did you ever witness a tornado or anything like that?
No. There's one went by after we lived in Heil later on. after I got out of the service, yeah, we were. And then there was one right south of Heil along the hills. And I happened to be in town at Elgin when it happened. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon when it hit. And that just skipped along the hills. But later on, there was a real bad one in Elgin. And that was on July 4th. There was 4 people killed. And what year do you think that was? About
78.
Was it that late? 78? Yeah. And it went through along the highway. There was a Highway 21 from Elgin to Carson. And it seemed like it followed that way all the way to Carson, and it went south to Carson. But it wasn't, well, within a half a mile of Heil, we had some damage. On the elevator, it tore the top off, and we had, the only damage we had in our place, some windows in our garage, and the antenna from the house that for television was blown off, and otherwise it didn't have too much in Heil, but Elgin had a lot of damage. It about four blocks all the way through town. It took everything. And then along Carson too, there was between Carson and Elgin, there was some farms that were destroyed.
How about the winter months? What were they like when you were growing up?
Well, that one, I remember 1936, we had a lot of snow. And the temperature stayed below zero for over 40 days and nights. Never come above zero. And the coldest it was around 46 below. But there was a lot of cold weather. And snow, we had to use the horses by sled to go to town. And then in the spring, there was a ridge there about 2 feet deep where that turned in ice when all the snow was the one that was still there, from the sled track. And it was, well, I don't think I went to town for a whole 30 days. It was just too cold. Emil and Art and my brothers had gone to town for supplies during that time, but I didn't.
So how would you guys stay warm during the winters when you were growing up?
Well, we had what do you call a heater in the room, and well, yeah, we had it in 2 rooms because where my folks stayed, and then one where us boys, we had a heater in there. So we stayed warm that way. Had coal, but in the heaters.
Where would you get coal from?
There was coal mines all around, near Heil and Leith and New Leipzig. There was coal all over that area. In fact, I did work in a coal mine for, 4 winters. I worked out of Heil at one of them, and their vein was only about 5 foot of coal in that vein. And they had to leave about 6 inches on top for safety. They always left that for safety in case it would give you a warning for a cave-in. And of course you had to timber it up and the rooms and everything. But I worked down below there 2 winters. And the last year I done all my own shooting and drilling, and we had to use powder to shoot the coal, and had to drill ahead with a long auger, and they had a lay track and everything. But the other first winter I just loaded coal, and then the second time I worked in the winter of 39 and 40, and then in the winter of 40 and 41, right before I went to service, we worked at Leith. And then there, my brother-in-law, Roswell Cameron, and I done all the loading in that mine. And that one day we loaded 50 cars. They were ton cars, the two of us. But that was the busiest day. But we loaded all the coal. And Edwin, my youngest brother, was the skinner in the mine, and his job was to move the cars from the mine to bring them up to a cable, and then that cable pulled them up, and then they dumped them up in a tipo, and that was over at Leith. But that vein was about 10 feet, so that was real good to work in. 10 foot of coal in that vein. So there was a lot of coal available.
How old were you when you were doing this?
Well, the last year I was about 25 then. Because I was 26 when I went into service. Well, now I would have been 26, so.
What about hailstorms? Did you ever witness a hailstorm?
Yes. Yeah, I remember one real bad one. We had gone down on a Sunday to pick choke cherries down at the river. Like I said, it was only a mile and a half away, and by horse and buggy. And I suppose we went down after 12 o'clock. But then we seen the weather started to form along about 3 o'clock. And we had picked, quite a lot of cherries by then. I think there was a couple of cream cans full, if I remember right. Anyway, we got home just in time before the storm hit, and there was hail. And the north, we had 3/4 of land. One was to the northwest of the farm. That got all hailed out. And we had just started harvesting the day before, and it was a fairly good crop. I don't know. I would say that was probably around 1926, maybe. My dad was still alive, I know that. He died in 27. Yeah, we got all hailed out. The south part, it wasn't quite as bad. We had some land south of the farm.
So, how did your family cope with the loss of crops?
Well, we did have some, like I say, some was harvested, and then the south part wasn't too bad, so it wasn't all. It didn't lose the whole crop, and of course the oats was bound. But my dad usually took a wagon load of wheat. There was a mill in Carson that made their own flour, and he'd take a wagon load of wheat over to Carson and bring home about 1,000 pounds of flour out of that wagon load of wheat, which was about 50 bushel. And of course he done that every fall. But there was some wheat to take over there, so at least they got the flour.
So what type of farmers, how would you describe your parents as farmers?
Oh, I think he was a good farmer. He
What?
had to break up practically all the land when he moved on there. He moved on there in 1917. So it was all prairie. Had to break everything up. In fact, his brother, August, he came out from Hosmer the first year he was there in 1916, I think, and helped him break up. Well, I don't imagine they done it all in 1 year, but
So are you named after your uncle?
yes, I was. Yeah, he was the youngest one of my dad's family, or the youngest brother.
And how much land did your father have?
Well, we had 3/4 is all. It's about, well, let's see, 320 is a half section, and it'd be about 700 acres, I guess. And later on, when when Emil farmed, after us three were in the service, he bought another quarter, so he had four and then it went back to, after Emil died, and then it went back to the rest of us, and then we sold it. In 1952, I think, is when we sold the land.
So when you were growing up, would you say your father was a grain farmer or
Yeah.
a cattle farmer? Or
Grain farmer, yes, yes. We had cows only for milking, yeah. We didn't have any range cows. Just kept cows for milking.
So what type of grains did he?
Well, barley, oats, and wheat, and rye, and flax. A lot of the new ground, there was some flax put in on the new ground. That seemed to be doing that on new breaking, the seeded flax in it. First year.
What we're going to do is start with talking about the farm and how it was set up. First, can you tell us about this painting? Who painted it?
My wife Mildred painted this picture.
And it's, what's it depicting?
Oh, it's a picture of the farm buildings where I was born and raised.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what each building is?
This top one is the house, and then over here is a granary, and down below here is the barn, and this one was the chicken coop. Oh, the chicken coop was way up here. The hog barn was way down here, and this here was another building. Well, it had supplies for the well, and it even had a little part of it was for granary that they put barley in. And also we had a grinding machine, a little small engine and a grinder that we'd grind our barley and oats for feed. That was in this building too. And then of course the well and the tank was right down here. And this is the fence that ran along there.
So was it a barbed wire fence?
Yes.
And next to the house, is that an outhouse?
Yeah, that's the outhouse, yeah.
Was that hard to get to in the wintertime?
Well, it was a little ways from the house, so no, it wasn't too bad. Where you had so much snow is in between the house and the barn, some winters. I remember one year we had a snow drift in here that was about 15 foot high between the house and barn.
Really?
Yep. He just blew it. And what we done, we had a chance to walk right through here to get to the barn. And then at first we went right over the top. The snow was hard enough. And then later on we went around this way to go to the barn.
So the house, how many rooms were in it?
Well, actually, there was only 4 rooms. My folks had a bedroom, and then they had a front room in that same part, in this part. And then over here, there was a porch, and then back in here, there was a kitchen, and then the kind of a dining room in this area, and then way in the back there where you can see the lean-to, that was our boys' room. You know, there was 4 of us boys.
Where did your sister sleep?
We slept there, yeah.
Where did your sister sleep?
No, she slept in the middle part. There was a little room off between the kitchen and the front room. There was another little room, and then my sister had that room.
How many beds did the boys have in your
We
your
just had 2 beds, two double beds, you know. 2 slept in each bed.
And what did you use for blankets and sheets when you were growing up?
Well, they had feather downs and other blankets, yeah.
So you said your dad bought this farm in 1917?
Mm-hmm.
Were the buildings on the farm when he bought
No, he had to build. There was nothing there. In fact, they built the house and the barn the summer before or the winter before. He moved out there in the spring of 17. But he had a neighbor by the name of Bill Fink went with him out there, and they had to go. Well, we lived east of Heil about half a mile, so he had about 5 miles to go. But they worked there all winter long, building the house and the barn, and then they had another neighbor helping them. And then, of course, we didn't. Well, that was in 16 probably when they built the barn and the house. And then in 17 is when we all moved on there, I think.
So did they dig the well too?
They had the well dug, yeah. Yeah, there was well diggers around that dug wells.
Where were the fields from your house?
A field?
Where was the field at where the crops were planted?
Well, one was right north of the house, 17 acres. And that was usually put into barley and sometimes wheat, but most of the time it was put into barley. And I remember we always raised a bunch of geese, and they'd go out there and they'd have a lot of good, and then you could see where a pretty good sized area where they would always clean up the whole plants. But they seemed like they enjoyed that green stuff.
And how many, you said you had about 20 horses, is that right? And then you had some saddle horses. What other animals were on the farm?
Cows, ducks and geese and chickens and hogs. Yeah, we raised hogs all the time. And of course they were used for butchering, and there wasn't too many hogs sold. They were usually, because we never used too much beef, but we used a lot of poultry and pork that was furnished.
And did you house those mostly in the barn during the winter?
Yeah, we had to keep that all that stock in the barn, and when it was so cold, yeah. Had enough room for the horses and the cows, and and there was always a few calves around, and of course they try to sell the odd stuff off in the fall of the year, so just had the cows to keep for the winter. I mean, like young calves and steers and stuff like that, they'd sell it.
What about, you mentioned that your father died young. What about the actual crops? Did you help out in the field with the crops
Oh yeah,
after your father
yeah.
died?
In fact, my dad died in the summer of 27, and yes, in fact, we had the harvesting was done, and well, my brothers Emil and Art and I were up at 3 miles from home in a thrashing crew, thrashing shock bundles or helping with it. And when my dad died, and then we were called home. And that was in the August of 27, month of August 27.
Can you tell me, you've mentioned a couple times that you worked for a threshing crew. What did you have to do?
I hauled bundles. Yeah. Yeah, I had a bundle. In fact, when I was 13 years old, another neighbor and I had to rack together. But when I was 14, I run my own with the rest of them. Yeah.
How long, in a day during threshing season, how long would you be out working?
Oh, we'd be out from about 7 to 7 in the evening.
Was that hard work?
Oh yeah, yeah, it was hard work. And I helped with the thrashing every year, as long as there was anything to harvest.
So did your family have a threshing machine, or did...
As a matter of fact, my dad was half owner of a separator. The engine was furnished by our neighbor. It was a case tractor. And to start with, there was 4 of them in together with the thrashing machine, but then the last few years it was just my dad and Fred Eisenbeis that had it together.
So would you, your dad and his neighbor, would you guys thrash other people's farms and then...
No, just their own.
Just their own.
Yeah. To start with, there was 4 in the family, and they had to thrash all them. But the last few years, there was just ours and theirs. And I guess, there's 1 or 2 years we thrashed for my uncle. He lived about a mile away from our place. All the grain fields joined ours, so we had thrashed for him a couple of years, but otherwise we didn't do any of it.
What other type of farming equipment did you have on when you were growing up?
Well, we had plows and a drill and disc and harrows, and well, there was about half of it was plowed every spring, and about half of it was disked and then seeded.
Okay, I didn't grow up on a farm, so I'm gonna ask you to explain the difference between plowing and disking a field.
Well, plowing is, well, your husband might know. It had, well, of course we used horses, but there was a gang plow and a sulky. The gang had 2 plow shares, and the gang, or the sulky, only had 1. And it made a fur of about 12 inches. In fact, I think our ganks were 14 and our sulky was 12 or 14 inch. And then they had plowshares, that they had, well, if they got dull, they had to take them to the blacksmith and get them sharpened. And they had well, after about 3 days, you had to put on different plowshares on the plows. And they were easy to take off and put different ones on. You had to have more than one set, so you could have the other at the blacksmith shop.
So was that expensive to maintain?
Not too much. Well, I think it cost them at that time probably about $3 a share. Well, it counted up. $2 maybe.
And then what's disking?
And of course, that was all paid by cream check. That's the only income there was, except creams and eggs. The expenses were paid by that. Grocers were bought with the eggs that the chickens laid. Except the pork and everything was furnished from the farm, and the flour, I told you how they got that. So they still had to buy sugar and coffee and stuff.
And what's disking? When you mentioned disking a field. Disking?
Disking.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a machine that had a disc on, about 12-inch disc, and then to put it in gear, you run it, or when it was not in gear, why it would be straight out, and otherwise it would turn like this, and then the disc created some soil, so that you could run the drill over to plant it, the grain.
So, when you were growing up, what was a chore that you really disliked?
Oh, I guess hauling hay in the summer. It was so hot, and we had to put up a lot of hay, for all the stock we had.
How far did you have to haul it?
Oh, sometimes a half a mile or so. By team, of course. We had put it in a hay rack and load it up and haul it home, unload it in a stack. And we always had 2 big stacks of hay, and then it'd be 2 of us unloading it and one on the stack, straighten it out the stack. And I never did do much stacking. Art is always the guy that had to do the stacking, and Emil and I would haul it, take it off the rack. But I never did like that. But had to be done.
You mentioned you had a lot of animals on the farm. Did you do a lot of butchering?
Yeah, we butchered hogs. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit?
Well, in the fall of the year, they usually fattened up about 3 hogs. They brought them up to 400 or 500 pounds, and they'd butcher them all 3 at the same time, with the help from neighbors. And that was butchering day. It took all day, and time they made sausage and everything, it went till midnight. Started early in the morning. So a lot of people killed beef for meat too, but we never did. We just had pork and poultry. Of course, we had a lot of ducks and geese and chickens, you know.
So you mentioned making sausage. Did you ever help with that process?
Oh yeah, I had to help with that.
Can you
Yeah.
explain that process a little bit to me?
Well, we had a sausage machine. First, we had to grind it all up, and that was with a hand grinder. We didn't have a power grinder. A lot of people did, but then we didn't have no electricity, so naturally we had to do it by hand. But and that was a big job, grinding up and they made they made liver sausage and head cheese and sausage, pork sausage. So there was a lot of meat to get ready. And then the last part of it was, of course, making the sausage. Then we had a smokehouse, and then my dad would smoke it with cherry wood they used. And they smoked the sausage, and then in the summertime, of course, you had to can it, but in the wintertime, it was good to have it out there on that smokehouse, and it would freeze, you know. And they made ham and pork chops and everything.
You mentioned liver sausage. Can you tell me how they made liver sausage?
Well, they used liver, of course, in it, and part of the meat right underneath the skin on the back, and some from the head was used for liver sausage. And head cheese, yeah, they made that too. There was some meat was used from the pig to make that head cheese. I don't remember just what parts of it.
What about making beer or wine? Did your family do that?
Yes, my dad made beer and he also made wine. I remember one time he had a 16-gallon crock where he had made his beer, and then they had a tester. He was able to have a tester to put in after a certain amount of weeks to see if it was ready to bottle. And I was out there one time and I fooled around with that tester and I kept hitting it, and the thing hit bottom and broke. And I got a good licking for it. I had to throw the stuff away.
Did it cost your dad some money to get a new tester?
Well, the tester didn't cost very much, no, but they had to throw that probably 8 gallons of beer away. And it was almost ready to bottle.
Let's see here. How about sauerkraut? Did your mom use
Yes, we had lots of sauerkraut, yeah, you bet. And I still like it. But I can't eat it now because it's got too much salt in it. I'm on a salt-free diet in the last 6 months because of my heart condition, and I don't dare eat any now.
When you were growing up, we talked a lot about the chores that you did, but did you ever have to help with the house chores?
No, Loretta and my mother done all that. We didn't even do, well, I guess maybe we helped with dishes sometime, yeah.
So they cleaned the house and they did the cooking.
Yeah.
How about the laundry? Did they do the laundry?
Yeah. In fact, my sister, after my mother died, my sister had had all those chores to do, and she had my sister was only about 16 when my mother died, so she had a lot of work to do, and she was going to high school in Leith, and then she'd come home, and she stayed there until Saturdays. We'd get her, and or Friday evenings, and then she'd be there until Sunday evening, so I'd take her back. Stayed with the family in Leith. But she had a lot of work to do, and then.
So when she was staying in town, did she stay the overnight, or?
Yeah, she stayed with the family, yeah.
So who did the cooking on the farm at that time?
Well, I did most of it, yeah.
How did you learn how to cook?
Oh, I just, from telling me a few things about, yeah, I done most of the cooking, and I didn't have to help with the dishes or anything. Emil and Edwin and I, of course, were there during the winter, all winter, and well, that one winter, Edwin went to school in Heil, so he stayed up in Heil during the week. And but she finished up at Leith the last year. In fact, she went through high school.
So we're talking about learning how to cook.
Well, I got so that I got one dish that I made and a lot, and it was, we call it a lupzi. It's a dish. It's got rice, diced potatoes, and sauerkraut, and pork dice. And in fact, I've still made it here. I haven't made it now for about 6 months because I don't dare have the sauerkraut got too much salt in it. But my neighbor over here, Clara Klein, who is a German, a lot of times I'd take some over for her after we make it, and boy, she really likes. She thinks it's great stuff. And then, of course, I cooked potatoes and macaroni, and we had a lot of ham and other meat to fix, of course.
So did you ever make a dish that wasn't edible?
Not that I know of. I might have to start with experiment some and had to throw it away. I don't know. Don't remember.
Let's turn a little bit to talk about your family. You said that you knew your grandparents. Let's start with your dad's parents. Did you know them?
Yes.
What were their names?
My dad's name was George, and my grandpa's name was George.
Okay.
And my grandma, Heyne. I don't remember what her first name was. Her maiden name was Doctor.
Doctor.
Yeah.
And can you tell me, did they come over from Russia?
Yes. They come over, I would say, about in 1892, because my dad was 8 years old when he come over. Yeah. In fact, my dad was born over there, yes.
So let's start with your grandpa Heyne. When you think about him, what type of a person was he?
Well, they were all very Christian people. I think my granddad in Hosmer, he was one of the first person that started building the church. He was And I think they went to church there in Hosmer all his life. And my youngest son ended up on the farm, or Uncle August ended up on the farm. And of course, my grandma and Heyne and my grandmother Heyne both died in 1936, within about 6 months of each other.
What type of a person was your grandma Heyne?
Oh, she was a hard-working person. She was quite short, and my granddad was fairly tall. He was about 5'10" or so, and then one of my uncles, Jacob, was quite tall. Most of the Heine's are small like I am. My dad was a little bit taller, but not much.
So, your grandma and grandpa Heyne, when they came over from Russia, did they ever learn to speak English?
To start with, I don't think they knew how. And they stayed. Oh, there is I just seen that Heyne write-up, and I could,
Well, we can look for it later, Dan.
well, if you want to find it's in that second drawer, but I can tell you exactly where I think they came in through Canada, and then they went to South Dakota. They landed from, I don't know what town in Canada, but they got down to South Dakota. I don't know which, and then they come back. Well, I mean, then they came to Hosmer by wagon train, I think. But I don't remember. Just it says it in that article there.
We can double check, after. we're
Okay.
done. That's not a problem.
And then of course he homesteaded, I think, in Hosmer, about 3 miles out of Hosmer, South Dakota, northwest of town.
So when you were growing up, did you get to visit them often?
Not too often, no. They are only there twice that I know of at our home place. And I think we were down one time, my sister and Art and Edwin went down, and we spent 3-4 days. My grandparents were still alive. I suppose that was a few years before they died. Must have been in the early 30s.
So they never lived in North Dakota then? They just lived
No,
in South Dakota?
no, they lived there all their life.
So how did your dad get to North Dakota?
Well, he homesteaded down in Lemon, South Dakota, near Lemon. And my mother and her brother homesteaded down there too. White Butte is where the area was. And that's southwest of Lemon. And that's where my dad and mother met, and that's where they got married. It's down there. And of course, my mother's family didn't come over until what's the early 1900s from South Russia. They come back much later than my dad's family.
So your mom, what was your mom's maiden name?
Simmerly. It's her name, no, Elizabeth Simmerly.
Can you spell that? The maiden name?
Z-I-M-M.
Cimmerlie.
they came over from Russia as well.
Yes.
Do you know?
They come in through New York, as much as I know. And my dad's people came in through Canada.
Do you know your grandparents' names?
Yeah. Now, what was my grandpa's name?
Actually, I might.
Was it Conrad? I know he had a son named Conrad.
Jacob. Jacob and Anne Marie.
Jacob. Oh, okay. Yeah,
Sounds right.
Jacob and Anne Marie.
yeah.
And
I only seen them people twice. And of course they were out there for my dad's funeral, and they were there one other time with the oldest daughter and her husband.
where did they settle at?
They were in Butte, Nebraska, is where they came in, and that's where they evidently they homesteaded there and lived there.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so
and
then,
that's right south of Yankton, in there someplace.
and then at some point your mother and her brother left and went to South Dakota?
Well, they went to South Dakota to homestead land. Yeah, and then my dad and then after a year or two they both sold the land, and they come up to Grand County, to near Elgin and Heil, where they finally ended up at.
So your dad was 8 when he came over.
Mm-hmm.
Was your mom born in Russia?
Yes.
How old was she?
Well, she was 3 years younger than my dad, so she would have been. My dad was born in 84, yeah, 1984, and my mother in 1887.
Okay. You mentioned that your mother and your father met in South Dakota. Do you know how that came to be? How they met?
No,
Okay.
no. But I mean, I think that they probably was joining land where they homesteaded, possibly. Yeah, because that's where they met, and they got married down there. And in fact, Art, my oldest brother, was born down there. And the rest of us were born up in Grant County, of course.
Did your parents ever talk to you about their memories of Russia? What that was like?
They did, but yeah, I wished I'd paid more attention. But well, you know, at that time, they talked about a Bolshevik, that who was the leader of Russia, and he's the one that caused all that. Now, what the heck was his name? I heard it at the time. And you know, it got so, when they first, well, my grandparents evidently were young when they were there, or might have got, maybe were born there too, I don't know. Because as much as I know, according to what I've read, the Germans from Russia went over there. The Germans went over to Russia in about 1840, I think. And my granddad, well, let's see. I knew when he was born too. It says it in that history there. Well, he would have been born probably in 1950 or early 1860, somewhere in there, I would imagine. So he was born in South Russia, yes.
was your mother's name?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And what type of a person was she?
Oh, very hardworking, religious person.
What denomination were you raised?
Lutheran. Her parents went to a Reformed church, and she was Reformed. And my uncle Jacob, similarly, he was in the. But of course, my mother went to the Lutheran after she was married.
Were you close to your mother when you were growing up?
Well, I don't suppose I was too close. There's too many things to do, and she had a lot of work to do.
And what was your father's name?
George,
That's right. It's named after his father, right?
yeah.
And what type of a person was he when you were growing up?
He was a very conscientious person and religious. Went to church every Sunday. We didn't miss any Lent service either, or Easter, or White Sunday is when we always kept those holidays, Good Fridays, and they were always kept. Easter Monday, we didn't work.
You said White Sunday?
That was it's 7 weeks after Easter. Pentecost, yeah. When Pentecost starts.
Were you close to your father when you were growing up?
Oh, I don't think I was real close to my parents, no.
In your home, did you guys speak German or did you speak English?
Yes, my folks, that's all they talked was German. And of course, Art and Emil, they started school, well, Art 4 years before I did, and Emil 2 years. So they were talking a little bit of English. I couldn't. I think I talked very little English when I went to school. It was German. And of course, I got confirmed in German too.
Really?
German language, yeah, when I was 14.
Can you tell us what confirmation was like back then?
Well, we usually had summer church school that lasted about 6 weeks. But the last 2 weeks were strictly for the confirmants. And that's where we had to learn all the literature to be confirmed. And I was the last one that was confirmed in Germany and in that church. My sister was 2 years later, and she got confirmed in English, but it was a different minister.
So you were raised Lutheran. What church did you attend?
Church in Heil. They had a church built in Heil, North Dakota. And actually, well, the church we still held church there until the 1960. But the German language quit in Heil. Oh, well, one summer we was without a minister, and then we had Reverend Heipel. He had a church north in New Leipzig, and he came all the way to Heil to fill in that one summer, and he still held German service at that time, just a few of them, and then from then on they were all English. But even in Elgin, they had German service there when we first joined. And that was in 1960. In fact, Pat helped play there the organ there for church and German service a few times.
So
That-
when you were growing up, the pastor, was he approachable for children, or was he somebody that children were kind of scared of?
No, the pastor come out real often to our place, and he was very good with children. In fact, he come out to hunt grouse in our cornfield several times, and he just happened to be gone at a seminar when my dad died, so I don't believe he was back. Somebody else had to have the funeral.
Do you remember the pastor that confirmed you, what his name was?
Wiedenhofer. I don't know how to spell that.
Taking a guess.
Wiedenhofer, yeah. And he was there, our minister, for, oh gosh, from the time I remember going to church, probably 6 years old, I don't know. And then I was 14, when I got confirmed, and he left after that. He went to South Dakota for a few years, and then he come back to Elgin and ended up being minister in Elgin then towards last years that he lived.
So can you tell me what a church service was like back then? What was Sunday like?
Well, we of course had to go to church by team and buggy. In the winter time it was by sled. And church was always at 10:30, so boss, it took about an hour to drive up there, And we went to church every Sunday, winter time or summer.
How long would the service last?
It lasted about an hour. And of course there was Sunday school after that. That would last a good half an hour or more. So it was usually 12 o'clock before we left church. Time we got home and had dinner on Sundays was at least 1 o'clock,
Would there be a special Sunday dinner?
Oh yeah, they always had chicken dinner, seemed like, in the summer. But I guess my mother always fixed it and put it in the oven and it was done when they got home.
You mentioned that your family was very devoted to their religion and that they always celebrated Easter and they would go to church and stuff. How would you celebrate Easter back then?
Well, just a Easter service, I guess. I don't know. Of course, they always had church on Good Friday and Thursday evenings, and on Easter Monday too.
And how far was the church from your home?
It was about 5 miles. 1 mile west and 4 miles south of Isle.
And how about Christmas? How would the church celebrate Christmas?
Oh, they had a Christmas program. All the young people from the Sunday school, they all had a piece to memorize and go up in front and say it, and had a Christmas tree, and they'd light that just when they sang Silent Night as a rule.
I'm
And
guessing that it wasn't with electric lights, so what did you use?
they had other lights, kerosene lights, I guess, and then they turned them down to low when they lit the Christmas tree, and they had candles on that, and then sing a few songs. There was always a Christmas program. And that's about the only presents we had. Our folks never gave Christmas presents or birthday presents or anything. And of course we got a sack from church with nuts and fruit and stuff in it, and that was our Christmas present, I guess.
What about funerals? What were funerals like back then?
Well, my dad's funeral was held at the house. And then, the body was kept at the house and then there was a short service at the house, and then they went to church. And we did have cars by then, so in fact my dad had the first year that he had a car was in 1924, so we had cars by 1927 when he died. Model T.
Were funerals back then in German or were they in...
It was in German, yes. Oh yeah, that was all German at that time.
Your dad died in August, right?
August.
Did
19
you ever have a funeral in the wintertime?
Well, my mother died in December. It was very cold.
Were they able to bury her at that
Yeah,
time?
yeah, they were. Yeah, and she died on the 8th of November, or December. It was very cold that day, but we did go to the funeral. Had quite a bit of snow. She died in 32, so I was only 17 when both of my parents were gone.
And your dad died in
27.
1927.
Mother lived 5 years longer.
When you think back to your childhood, what is one of the most scariest experiences you had as a child?
Well, there's a few times I got scared with rattlesnakes, but I know one time we unloaded a load of hay, and then of course the hay rack, they had kind of a box made over where the wheel was, in the back. The front wheels, of course, were lower. And then right on the other side of this place where that box was for the wheel, there was a rattlesnake laying in the back, and we had to unload all that hay. And there's a couple times when we were working in the cornfield, we had our dad had us, after he got through cultivating for a certain amount of weeks, and then he had us go out there with hose to go over the cornfield to get the weeds, what was left. And once I remember as I was taking a step, I heard a rattling, and there was a rattlesnake right in front of my foot, and I got over it without him hitting me. That was probably the worst scare I had.
Were there a lot of rattlesnakes back then?
There was rattlesnakes. They usually never got close to the house, except later on when Loretta and I was gone that summer, and they found one down in the basement. and my brother Emil took the 22 and shot it. Yeah.
Did
But yeah, we always found some out in the pasture every year. Yeah. In fact, down at the river they had a den, a rattlesnake den, and some people would work those dens in the wintertime.
Did you know anybody that ever got bit by a rattlesnake?
No, we didn't. No, nobody that I know of. That is around our area. But I heard of people getting bit, yeah.
What about when you think back, what is one of your happiest childhood memories?
Oh, I suppose was playing baseball. I enjoyed that very much.
You said that you played for the town team. Did your brothers also play for the town team?
No. My neighbors did. We had kind of a team before when I was 13, and kind of a farm team. And, well, Ben Ketterling, he was our main catcher, and Alvin Ketterling was the pitcher, and they were neighbors of ours, lived 2 miles away. And during my younger days, and then there was another farm by Eisenbeiss, and then the John Ketterling farm family. So we played a lot of baseball behind the barn when I was, from probably 7 years old on, or 8 at least. So, and then in school we played there too. But yeah.
How about one of the most adventurous things you did as a child? What was something adventurous?
As a child, I don't know.
Is there anything else about your childhood that you wanted to add?
Oh, I don't think so. People that were raised on a farm, they had a lot of work to do, and they all had to help. And I was in the middle of the family, but I still then ended up helping a lot on the farm. And Sundays, of course, we went and played baseball, but after church, we had to go to church first. Sometimes we even walked 3-4 miles to play somewhere.
A question that I always like to end an interview with is, why did you want to participate in this interview today?
Oh, I don't know. I was asked, so I just consented, I guess.
Well, we appreciate you doing this. This has been really, really great. So, unless there's anything else you'd like to add, we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
I think we covered a lot of things.
Okay, well, we appreciate it.